I want to explain why I voted against this bill as a member of the Education Committee and why I will vote against it on the floor today. I want to be very clear to this body that I do not oppose prayer. What I oppose is this political body, this group of politicians legislating prayer. We have a long-established constitutional right to prayer, as well as to student-led prayer in our schools, and I don't have one word to say to oppose that fundamental constitutional right. On a personal note, I want to share with my colleagues on the floor that I am personally a person of faith. My own actions, my own choices are guided by my own deeply held values, rooted in my faith traditions. Among those values is a deep and abiding belief in the moral and individual right of conscience. As politicians, I just don't believe that we have any business inserting our legislative directives into any individual's practices of prayer, meditation, or reflection. In my faith tradition, we turn to sources of wisdom for guidance. And as one example, I'd like to quote from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 5 and 6. "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen." Back to the bill under discussion, I agree wholeheartedly with the language of the bill that Kentucky students are our greatest resource. If we are sincere in that belief, then there's real work we can do in our elected role as legislators to demonstrate our commitment to students. We could demonstrate our faith in the synagogues and on street corners, or we can focus on our roles and responsibilities as policymakers. If we believe, and I believe we do believe, that Kentucky students are our greatest resource, as the bill states, then we must strengthen our schools by adequately and equitably funding them. If we believe that Kentucky students are our greatest resource, then we must give them access to the best and brightest teachers, which will require manageable class sizes, sufficient teacher compensation, and the promise for our teachers of a secure and dignified retirement. If our students are our greatest resource, we must recognize the unprecedented amount of trauma that many of them are facing as a result of poverty, the opioid addiction crisis, growing community violence, and increasingly toxic and frightening public discourse, and numerous other factors, and provide the full wraparound supports and services, food, clothing, housing, healthcare, including mental health care, and social and emotional supports that our students need in order to learn and thrive. All Kentuckians are already fully free, as this bill would provide, to pray for, meditate, and reflect on, and encourage the success of Kentucky students every day of the year. That can, will, and I would argue ought to, without any legislative action by this body. Let's clear the politics and the politicians out of the way of the deeply personal and private practices of prayer, meditation, reflection, or other personal practices and choices of the people who elected us. If we want to demonstrate our collective belief that Kentucky students are our most precious resource, then let's remember our roles and responsibilities as legislators, get out of the way of the individual and moral right of conscience, and buckle up for next year's budget session where we can do the real work it will take to support our students, our most precious resource, and our future. And finally, I want to thank you to the bill sponsor for the bill, which is really beautiful in its own way. And even though I will vote against it, it gives us an opportunity to check in with our own moral right of conscience and to reflect on our collective responsibility as a political body to provide for the future of our Kentucky students, which I truly believe and affirm are our greatest resource. Thank you.